Traditionally, ant eggs were laid by ant queens, not ant kings. There had to be something quite different about these eggs. If they were the ant king's eggs, then they would all be super creatures. But there had to be at least 100,000 in the cave. If they were all super creatures, the devil ant would reign over the second god's sanctuary unopposed. If they were created by the ant king, they couldn't be super creatures. They had to be something else. Hansen stepped on one of the eggs. Mutant creature hunted, subterranean devil ant baby. The beast's soul has not been acquired. Consume its flesh to obtain a random numeric amount of mutant genopoints, ranging from 0 to 10. Ah, so these aren't super creatures. Hansen then stepped on a few more to check. He managed to squish a few more mutant variants, as well as ordinary variants. He could not find any sacred blood types. However, the pangolin must have been confused about this as well. Sometimes it stopped eating, as if to test the quality of what it was consuming. The way it rummaged through the eggs suggested it was looking for super creature ones, too. Hansen bent over and picked up an egg, observing it the best he could. There were so many ant eggs there that if he ate them willy-nilly like the pangolin was, he would never find what he was looking for. Hansen checked out a few more and noticed they were mostly identical, and their class could not be concerned by the naked eye. The ants were smart. By heaping so many similar eggs together, no one was able to tell where the most precious ones were hidden. But for Hansen, things were different. Their appearances were all the same, yes, and the difference of their contents was something not even the pangolin could discern. Hansen had his Dongshuin Sutra, with its first gene lock unlocked. He used it, and his Dongsu aura spread. The life force of the eggs were easily detectable to Hansen. Although they were only eggs, their life forces weren't all that different than they would be after hatching. Super creatures were super creatures, too, so if they were out there somewhere amongst all the other eggs, their life forces were sure to shine like a beacon. Hansen scanned all the ant eggs and soon found an egg with a life force that was stronger than the others. Hansen went there and crushed the egg, which instantly played a notification he was eager to hear. Sacred blood creature hunted, subterranean devil ant baby. The beast's soul has not been acquired. Consume its flesh to obtain a random numeric amount of sacred genopoints, ranging from 0 to 10. As expected, this is a sacred blood class egg. Hansen put the crushed egg in his mouth and it tasted very fresh, like shrimp. It had the bonus of not stinking like seafood, too. Hansen kept using his ability to sense the life forces of the eggs and continued prowling around the cave in search of more. It wasn't long before he found 3 more sacred blood eggs. Suddenly, a particular life force stood out to him. It was one that looked like a brazier, a light in the dark. The life force was far stronger than that of any sacred blood egg. I have found it. With exuberant joy, Hansen immediately went to pick it up. Hansen picked it up and started playing with it. When he looked at it from the outside, he noticed no difference. It looked as plain as all the other eggs, lacking any indication that it was special. He squeezed it with his hand, but it was like a solid ball of rubber. With its elasticity, it resumed its initial shape after being pushed or squashed. Hansen could not break it. This really is something special. Hansen was delighted, so he quickly pocketed the egg and returned to searching the cave with his aura. By the time he was done, Hansen managed to find 6 more sacred blood class eggs and only that one super egg. He was satisfied with this result. Hansen took another look at the pangolin, which was still eating, and gave up on the idea of killing it. The pangolin was a strange creature, and Hansen didn't think he could one-hit kill it anyway. And if there was a struggle, the Ant King was sure to become aware of their presence and pay them a visit. With Hansen still weak and drained of energy, he figured he wouldn't be able to escape. Hansen summoned Snow Charmer. They each held a sack, and they filled them up with as many eggs as they could. Once they were done, they exited the area via the tunnel the pangolin had dug. After exiting the tunnel, Hansen saw that the little angel was still locked in combat with the Ant King. Hansen returned the way he came, but took notice of the little angel's situation. She and the Ant King were locked in a stalemate, where one could not hurt the other despite how much they tried. It didn't seem likely either would win anytime soon, so Hansen eventually called on her to return and give up on fighting it. The Ant King was a powerful fiend, and it had the toughest shell. With its ability to recover being so quick, there was no point exerting any more effort or time on the faint hope of killing it. Besides, he had already received one of the Ant King's super eggs. Therefore, there was no point in hanging around trying to kill the fully grown creature. After he exited the cave from the tunnel, Hansen summoned his wings as quickly as he could. With his bounty of Iki treasure in hand, he left the area. If the Ant King found out about its missing eggs, heaven knew what it would do. It might even turn into a berserk super creature, and that would be horrid. Hansen had already flown a few miles when he heard a few high-pitched, sonic screams. His eardrums felt as if they had been jabbed by needles. It seems as if the Ant King has discovered its egg is missing. Hansen did not linger or cruise the skies, so he flew even faster to get away from the mountain. Hansen had been well rewarded. In the event accidents were to occur, he wanted to return home immediately. He wasn't in a rush to find a super creature right now, either. He had managed to collect 23 devil ants and 7 sacred blood devil ants. He had thought he might be able to collect more, but perhaps the pangolin was lucky enough to swallow a few. He had 2 bags that were a mixed assortment of ordinary eggs and mutant eggs. There was a total of 900 spread across both those sacks. Back in the Crystal Palace, Hansen quickly placed the Ant King's egg on the crystal table. He summoned his flaming Rex spike and cast Toxic Dragon Drill directly upon it. The Ant King's egg was tough, but it was still just an egg. It wasn't half as strong as the Ant King's shell, so the egg was quickly splattered by the whirling drill of the Rex spike. Super creature hunted, subterranean devil Ant King baby. The beast's soul has been acquired. Consume its flesh to obtain a random numeric amount of super geno points, ranging from 0 to 10. Hansen was very surprised, hearing no mention of the life geno essence. The egg was very small, though, and he supposed it was quite fair to that there was no room for a life geno essence to have grown inside it yet. It looks like eggs aren't able to produce life geno essences. Does that mean I can eat its flesh? Hansen picked up the shattered egg shell and scooped up the battered remains of what was once an ant. He sunk his teeth into the sticky, gloopy contents and was surprised to find it softer than he expected. The meat was rather tender, and he wondered if this was similar to what had happened with the bone elephant's body. After it died, it wasn't as tough as it was when it was alive. Hansen was overjoyed, and he didn't bother cooking it. He just put it in his mouth and ate it straight. Subterranean Devil Ant King baby consumed. You have received 1 super geno point. A strange energy seemed to whirl inside his belly. His body felt numb as it started to vibrate, and his cells felt alive with a unique thrust of energy. He felt refreshed. Hansen ate the eggshell and received an additional 7 super geno points. His skin became extraordinarily smooth, like he had smeared heaps of collagen onto his face. He looked younger, his face rejuvenated. He didn't know when the eggs might hatch, so he let his companions dine on them. But he would be the one to eat the 7 sacred blood eggs, of course. The rest were reserved for a barbecue. Hansen brought Zero, the little angel, Snow Charmer, Princess Yin Yang, and the silver fox around for barbecue fiesta. Hansen skewered a number of eggs on a prong and placed them above an open fire. There were 6 sacred blood class eggs on the skewer. Oil sizzled on the fire, and a pleasant fragrance wafted from the eggs. Subterranean devil ant baby consumed. You have received 1 sacred geno point. The notifications and slight upward ticks of his sacred geno amount increased, and then Hansen squinted. Maxed out sacred geno points, here I come, Hansen said as he continued to munch on the cooked eggs. After he ate all 6, he still needed 8 more points to max out the number. But that was fine, as Hansen brought out a few sacred geno ants to deshell and cook. After Hansen ate his 4th cooked ant, he heard the final announcement ring. Finally, I have maxed out my sacred geno points. Hansen gave a long sigh, feeling super happy. Hansen, super body, king spirit. Status, evolver. Lifespan, 300. Body evolution requirement, 100 geno points. Own genes, basic geno points, 100. Ordinary geno points, 100. Mutant geno points, 100. Sacred geno points, 100. Super geno points, 17. Hansen punched the testing machine. The meter showed 217.6587, which meant Hansen's fitness was over 200. He was in his purest form, too. The strongest known human in the second god's sanctuary was sitting at around 150. There was a frightening gap between Hansen and that person. Although this was just a simple test he had conducted, he was still supremely satisfied. If he had calculated things correctly, when he maxed out his super geno points, he'd be at a fitness level of 300. He would become a celestial being and be able to challenge super creatures solo without a problem. Although he could not effectively face them as he was right now, he had what it took to fight back. He wasn't like other people, who would quickly find themselves crushed by such intimidating foes. He exited the testing lobby at around lunchtime, and he was planning to have lunch with Yanran. Unfortunately for him, she was busy with work and had to leave the base. That led to Hansen going for lunch by himself. Hansen had ordered his lunch and sat down when he saw Annie approaching, with a dish of her own in hand. She sat directly in front of him. You really don't want to take part in Divinity's bout? Annie asked Hansen. No, I don't want to, Hansen replied as he shook his head. Why? Annie asked, frowning. In her eyes, Hansen had a super pet that could even the odds and cement a position amongst the 10 Son of Gods, bringing some much-needed glory to humanity. The pet's power is only that of a pet. Do not overestimate it, Hansen told her coldly. But even so, you still have a chance, Annie pleaded. Hansen smiled and said, that is a genuine battleground. It's not a game, I won't respawn. I won't put my life on the line for some title. Annie just took a long, icy stare at Hansen before grabbing her dish and walking away. Hansen was aware that many people were hoping for him to join, but he really couldn't take part. If he exposed the fact that he had absorbed the life geno essence, the alliance would require an answer. In such circumstances, the Jai or Kin family would be unable to protect him. This was a matter concerning the human race. He would be pressured by people on every side. That was why Hansen was going to use Dollar as his identity when he joined. Even if people were able to tell that the elusive Dollar had absorbed life geno essences, no one knew who he was. Nothing could be done about it. Super Devil Ant King, Armored Beast Soul. The defense of a super armored beast soul was unfathomably high, and that was the key he'd have to exploit when going up against a super spirit. Plus, Hansen could simulate the Devil Ant King's energy flow. That energy flow, when combined with the Ant King armor, increased his defense by an incredible amount. In addition, it also improved his recovery speed and his strength. It was a powerful energy flow, and using it in tandem with the Ant King armor would make him as tough as a cockroach that stubbornly refused to die. Hansen ran the Devil Ant's energy flow and the Devil Ant King's armor looked even darker. From bright purple, it became a deep, dark shade of purple. Hansen had a look at himself and was satisfied with his appearance. He thought this super armor would enable him to battle the super spirits with relative confidence. After that, Hansen no longer went to hunt. He used the remainder of his time to learn stronger melee skills. He couldn't use the Flaming Rex Spike or Peacock Crossbow anymore. The dual sword skill was quite powerful, but he wouldn't stand a chance if he used the Berserk Sacred Blood swords. The dual sword skill itself was no weaker than the little angel's talons, but the swords were. He tested out his swords on her, and when she struck Hansen's Silver Snake and Ancient Mascot swords, she left deep gashes on them both. Logging into the Saint Hall at the military, Hansen started searching for a fist skill he deemed suitable. He looked for quite some time, but to no avail. None enticed him. The hyper-geno arts here in the Saint Hall tend to focus on S-rank skills for ordinary folk. The S-rank skills were not weak, but Hansen had far exceeded their benefits. He wanted something like Heavenly Go or 7 Twist, something legendary. He wouldn't waste time on other skills anymore. Hansen went to the Saint Hall's ordinary section but had even less hope going there. If he couldn't find one in the military section, there'd be even less chance here. Hansen took a look and to his surprise, managed to find a melee skill that attracted him. It was a hyper-geno art called Sonic Thunder Punch. The description stated that after mastery of the skill had been achieved, it was possible to deal sonic damage. But such a level required a very high fitness. Although it was an evolver's skill, the practitioner had to be near the rank of a celestial being to learn it effectively. Otherwise, he would need a really good thunder element body build. After giving it a good look, Hansen grew fond of the concept of Sonic Thunder Punch. Although he didn't have a thunder build, he could easily simulate the Silver Fox's energy flow to possess the element of thunder. If he did that, Sonic Thunder Punch would come easy to him. Hansen thought this skill could really work, but he didn't dare buy it there in the Saint Hall. If he ended up using it in Divinity's Bout, it'd be easy for someone to look up the records of who bought it in recent times. Usually, purchase logs were kept secret in the central computers, in accordance with the laws of the Alliance. But just to be safe, Hansen went to ask Lai Zinglun. He had hacked the military's virtual Skynet, so it was only natural to assume he could provide some advice on how to proceed. Hansen wasn't going to mention the specific skill he wished to purchase, just ask how he might go about buying something from the black market anonymously. Lai Zinglun was well versed in such topics and shady deeds, so he was able to explain a few simple and effective methods Hansen could use for what he wished to do. Hansen checked out a few of the places that Lai Zinglun mentioned, and they were indeed black market trading grounds. Buying stuff there, however, was a risky ordeal. Trades there were not protected, and there were no guarantees, warranties, or records of such purchases. There was also the possibility he wouldn't even receive the stuff he ordered. As a result, Hansen gave up on his idea of purchasing something from the black market. He would instead visit the free trade sections and see if he could buy Sonic Thunder Punch there. It was not uncommon for people to sell second-hand goods there, including hyper-geno art and geno solution. Hansen searched for Sonic Thunder Punch there, but he was out of luck. Not a single person was selling it second-hand. He searched through the S-Class Hyper Geno Arts as well and received quite a few hits. Many people were selling second-hand Hyper Geno Arts and Geno Solution, just not the skill he had come for. When it came to buying second-hand Hyper Geno Arts, however, there were a few clauses would-be buyers had to be aware of. There was no way of knowing whether or not Hyper Geno Art copies were complete, and there was no way of knowing whether or not the accompanying Geno solution matched. Scams and misleading transactions were common there due to the lack of official support. The Hyper Geno Art that enticed him was called Elephant Disc Punch. Hansen had heard about this skill before, as it was a legendary skill hailing from ancient times. The scrolls said that back then, people thought that the world was built on a disc that rested on the back of an elephant. The elephant was everything, whereas the disc was time and space. Although it was little more than a myth, the skill that had been written down on the scroll was extremely difficult. It had many illegible portions and missing text, so it was quite incomplete. Someone had researched the leftover portions of the scroll, and said that some manner of elephant blood was necessary to finish learning the skill. Hansen was feeling hopeful and rather excited. He thought to himself, the elephant disc punch is so in-depth. If I simulate the bone elephant's energy flow, I wonder if I'll be able to cast the true strength of elephant disc punch. If I can cast its true power, I doubt anyone would be able to tell it was from a little-known A-class skill. Hansen used the Geno solution and got to work on practicing elephant disc punch. He tried to combine it with the bone elephant's flow. By doing this, Hansen discovered something amazing. Whenever he used the bone elephant's energy, he could not control his power and instead had to blast it all out at once. But the more he continued to use the bone elephant's energy to practice elephant disc punch, the more he could control its energy. Hansen was pleased. If he could more effectively control the energy and power of the bone elephant, then he wouldn't be entirely drained of energy after a single punch. By being able to control the strength of the punch, he wouldn't be wasting his power. All he would have to do was cast what he needed. The more Hansen practiced, the better he got. A single punch packed enough strength to sunder a mountain, or so it felt. Regardless, the power was massive. The elephant disc punch was incredibly in-depth, and it wasn't any worse than his dual sword skill. In some ways, it was even better. That month flew by, and all the shelters had now named their top combatants. It was time for Divinity's bout to begin. Fang Minquin entered the battle arena from the shelter and found his seat. He looked to the center of the arena, waiting for Divinity's bout to begin. Although Fang Minquin was in a royal shelter that had 500,000 people in it, the arena itself could seat very few. The humans in the second god's sanctuary were not very enthusiastic about Divinity's bout. The primary focus of humans when it came to Divinity's bout was on the holy battles that took place between humans in their own shelters, so that they could see who was the best. But when it came to the actual Divinity's bout, interest quickly waned. A lot of humans would choose to concede following their qualification, as the battles to come were of life and death. Fang Minquin was watching Divinity's bout in the hope that Dollar would be there. Dollar was in the second god's sanctuary, and it was likely an accomplished fighter such as he would be willing to participate. That being said, he didn't have much hope. Dollar had only been in the second god's sanctuary for a short period of time. No matter his strength, the spirits were likely to dwarf any hopeful competitor. Fang Minquin, waiting for the match to begin, heard his name called out from behind. He turned his head to the sight of someone he knew. Mr. Hua. Fang Minquin quickly walked over and shook his hand. Mr. Hua's full name was Hua Ping. He had been in the second god's sanctuary for 100 years. He was one of the earliest evolvers. He now worked in the media as well and was a supervisor to Fang Minquin. You are interested in Divinity's bout. Hua Ping looked on Fang Minquin with modest surprise. I am interested, yes. That is why I have come to watch. Old Hua, have you come here to report on Divinity's bout as well? Once every 10 years, I do it. This is the 13th article I will have done in regards to Divinity's bout. Few people read them, so it is not likely many would know of this work. If it's that bad, why do you still insist on doing it? Fang Minquin asked, with visible confusion. Doing a show that no one paid heed to tended to go against the principles of someone in the media. For an old supervisor to insist on doing a show every 10th year on Divinity's bout was quite surprising. Viewership figures are important, I must confess. But as a man of the media, I believe in reporting things that are meaningful for the progression of the human race. Humans don't do well in Divinity's bout, that is true, but there are glimmers of inspiration and ought to be found. Talented people come here every 10th year in the hopes of securing honor and glory for humanity. Regardless of whether they win or lose, they are selfless heroes. Old Hua sighed and then continued to say, but now, I fear glory has taken a grander prominence in the hearts of men. Only victory and success define a person's worth these days. Humans who fail are disdained, and that is something no person can bear. I make records of these battles so future competitors of Divinity's bout can learn something. Fang Mingquan perused the list of participants intently in the hopes of finding Dollar there. Hua Ping, who was beside him, used a pen to record something. His face was very serious. He really is here, Fang Mingquan blurted out when he found Dollar's name on the list of battlers. Hua Ping looked confused. He turned his head to look at Fang Mingquan and asked, you have a friend who has joined Divinity's bout? Yes, Fang Mingquan responded with great enthusiasm. Although he had never met Dollar, or even exchanged words with him, he cherished him as a good friend in his heart. He considered him his best friend, as a matter of fact. What is the number of your friend's battleground? Let me see if he's going up against a spirit, Hua Ping said. Fang Mingquan quickly gave him the number. Hua Ping was an expert, so he'd be able to tell him quickly what Dollar was about to go up against. Dollar and Black Gold, your friend is unlucky, it would seem. He has encountered a spirit in his very first match. Black Gold is a very powerful royal spirit. He has armor that is nigh impenetrable. Even sacred blood class weapons have great difficulty dealing damage to it, Hua Ping said as he looked. As they spoke, the two combatants entered their battleground. One combatant was 3 meters tall and clad in black armor. He looked terrifying. His movements were almost like a mechanical robot, built from steel. The other fighter looked fairly strong compared to what might be expected of a human. However, he was clad in a purple armor that looked relatively thin next to his opponent's. The Black Gold spirit shouted and raised the hammer he wielded, which was bigger than a small car. He smashed the ground in front of Han Sen with a force that probably could have toppled a small mountain. Fang Mingquan watched Dollar with great trepidation. Although Dollar was wearing purple armor, he could tell it was Dollar from the way the man held himself. As he observed Dollar facing off with Black Gold, it frightened him. Fang Mingquan was an evolver himself, so he could clearly sense the threatening power that resided within the hammer Black Gold wielded. Your friend seems a little slow. His abilities are strength-focused. If that is true, he won't fare too well against a foe such as Black Gold. His enemy's power is infinite, so unless he is one of the strongest humans in history. Hua Ping trailed off, but such a sentence had only one conclusion. Fang Mingquan didn't see Dollar dodge, and neither did Dollar draw a weapon. He watched nervously, as Dollar had only been in the shelter for a couple of years and his power had most likely not peaked yet. Going up against such a frightening foe was wildly dangerous. As Black Gold's hammer swung again, poised to land on Dollar's head, he brought out his right fist and punched the hammer. When Hua Ping witnessed this move, he shook his head and said, your friend is a reckless one. Black Gold's power is... Before Hua Ping could finish his sentence, Dollar's fist collided with the hammer. Boom. The hit was deafening, and the fist shattered the hammer into pieces. Hua Ping and Fang Mingquan were motionless. They couldn't even fathom the strength that resided in that fist, for it to break a giant metal hammer such as that. Hua Ping was shocked the most. He had witnessed many Divinity's bouts over the years and was knowledgeable about many of the fighters there. That included Black Gold, the spirit. He was a remarkable warrior. He may not have been the strongest, but he possessed a lot of strength nonetheless. Against his unbreakable armor and intimidatingly large hammer, many evolvers had died, or at the very least, been grievously injured in battle with him. On the battleground, after Han Sen wrecked the hammer, a flood of power boiled inside his body once more. Seeing Black Gold himself aghast at what had just happened, Han Sen stepped forward with atmosphere-cracking strength, directly before the spirit's face. His flesh was like that of a tiger, and his fist buzzed loudly as it flashed towards Black Gold's face. Black Gold shouted and crossed his arms in an attempt to block the incoming attack. Boom. His armor, arms, and skull were crushed under the weight of Han Sen's elephant disc punch. Blood soaked the arena, and the disfigured and dismembered body of Black Gold was launched out of the battleground. The bloody mess crash landed 15 meters away. How is that possible? Hua Ping was on his feet, his book and pens fallen to the floor. As he looked upon Dollar, his eyes widened until it looked like they were going to fall out. It was a one-punch victory. Mingquan, is this man human? Hua Ping asked after Dollar left the arena, excitedly grabbing Fang Mingquan's hand. Yes, he is. Dollar is pretty popular in the Alliance, Fang Mingquan quickly told him in his own excitement. If he is really human. Wait, let me see. Hua Ping was no longer coherent in his dialogue, as he ran his hands up and down his body in search of his book. Realizing it was on the floor, he raced to pick it up. He began flipping through the pages, scanning the battle lists, and frantically drawing with his pen. Fang Mingquan wasn't sure what he was doing. He drew with a manic speed. Every time he wrote down a name and drew a line, his face perked with further excitement. Fang Mingquan looked at what Hua Ping was doing and noticed it was a calculation of the battle list. It seemed as if Hua Ping was trying to determine who Dollar would face off against next. 10 matches. He won't go up against anyone stronger than Black Gold for another 10 matches. This is a chance. Hua Ping's face had gone red as a beetroot, and he beamed with delight in his mad drawings. The excitement in his face was getting deeper and deeper, but after a while, his face froze. His excitement drained away, and he sat down in evident disappointment. His eyes looked empty as he mumbled, "It still doesn't work. It still doesn't work. Old Hua, what doesn't work?" Fang Mingquan quickly asked, eager to understand what was going on. "Your friend is pretty lucky. If he continues fighting, he shouldn't encounter any more opponents who are that powerful. If he is lucky enough, he can reach the top 10. But," Hua Ping gave a long, drawn-out sigh. Then, he continued by saying, "In his final fight, the one before he can be crowned Son of God, he must face off against an opponent no human can possibly defeat." "What manner of opponent do you speak of?" Fang Mingquan asked. In the 5th Divinities bout, there was a light element Son of God. Although this Son of God had only joined once, he was extremely powerful. His power now is something few humans might ever fathom. No human can beat him. Even evolvers with unlocked gene locks don't stand a chance. Before the light Son of God, they would be crushed like bugs. Hua Ping bore a wry smile as he explained the predicament. "You know the Alliance created a forfeit guide for the second God's Sanctuary's Divinities bout." "Yes. Yes, I know. It contains a record of all the most powerful spirits that have participated in Divinities bout. If they encounter a spirit on that list, they are advised to immediately forfeit to avoid being killed," Fang Mingquan said. "Light Son of God is one of those. I have been too presumptuous. No human is powerful enough to become a Son of God. You need more than luck on your side to do that. I advise that you inform your friend of this wretched development. Tell him he can continue fighting for now, but he must pull out before the final battle. If he doesn't, the light Son of God won't even allow him the opportunity to concede." Fang Mingquan was getting an idea of how bad things might get, but he had no way of contacting the elusive Dollar. Fang Mingquan thought his best bet for informing Dollar would be posting a news article about it. If he did that, there was at least a chance Dollar might see it. Dollar is here, and he's taking part in Divinity's bout. Dollar only became an evolver a few years ago. He's taking part in Divinity's bout already. Holy crap. Black Gold's hammer was smashed into smithereens by Dollar's fist, and he then proceeded to kill the spirit with a single punch. "Are you yanking our chain?" I remember the previous Divinity's bout, in which my friend went up against Black Gold. He had unlocked his gene lock, and yet despite that, he was immediately struck by the hammer 3 times and was at the precipice of death before he could be dragged out and forfeit. Dollar rocks. I'm going to go watch Dollar battle. Let's all go support Dollar tomorrow. If Dollar is there, I'll be there. If the analysis is true, though, poor Dollar, he'll be stopped in his tracks one step away from the top. Why do you guys assume he can keep on winning? His previous record was only landing as the 10th Son of God in the first God's Sanctuary, and he only competed there once. Yeah, Dollar is a scrub out here in the second God's Sanctuary. The light of God will crush him with his finger. What is the point of fighting if it's all down to luck? If he didn't face off against the light Son of God and become one of the top 10, he'd still be killed by the other Son of Gods. He is sidewalk litter against them, trash kicked to the side on the pavement. With the luck you guys are talking about, I could be a Son of God. I could join and be lucky enough not to face off against any strong foe, and then pow, I'll be a Son of God. Dollar's participation in Divinity's bout was the catalyst for a great schism in the Alliance. A great debate had begun, and many people rooted for Dollar. They wanted him to become the first human Son of God in history. But there were many people who did not believe Dollar could make it and beat the light Son of God in the process. People with sense were more likely to advise Dollar to give up the fight, lest he be killed. There were some really crude and offensive professionals, however. Many of them firmly believed Han Sen would stumble and fall long before he reached the light Son of God. And of course, there were some who believed Fang Mingquan was making stuff up or at least exaggerating the truth in a bid to increase viewership. They did not believe Dollar could break Black Gold's hammer with a single hit. After much research and analysis, they theoretically proved Dollar lacked sufficient power to do such a thing. Regardless, the whole alliance was talking about the event, and everyone seemed to have a theory of their own. And on the second day of Divinity's bout, the stadium was packed to the gills with attending spectators. Humanity's interest in the second god's sanctuary's Divinity's bout had suddenly been reinvigorated. Here he is. Here he is. A man clad in purple armor stepped onto the battlegrounds, and when he arrived, the crowd went wild with screams. Why is he wearing purple? Dollar is usually dressed in gold. Is this some sort of knockoff? It looks like him, yet it doesn't at the same time. Han-sen emerged onto the battleground not having researched his opponents nor read the forfeit guide. He only had to detect an opponent's life force to determine how powerful they truly were. Even if he couldn't tell, the Devil Ant King armor would keep him safe. Han-sen's opponent now entered the field. It was a pretty boy spirit dressed in silver armor. In his hand, he held a silver sword. He had bunny-like ears and there was an eye in his forehead. Aside from that, he could have passed for a regular human. People had already looked at Han-sen's list of battlers, so they knew what to expect from his first opponent. The enemy was called Silver Eye Prince. He was a royal spirit with a really quick moveset. In the analysis provided by professionals, he was one of the strongest foes Dollar would have to overcome if he hoped to fight against the Light Son of God. The Silver Eye Prince checked out his opponent without saying a word. Then, he drew his sword. Like a sudden flash of silver light, he dashed towards Han-sen. At the same time, he unleashed a barrage of sword thrusts towards Han-sen. There were too many to count. They came down on Han-sen like silver rain. A lot of people stood up, wanting to get a better look at how Dollar sought to best this silver rain sword. But Han-sen did not move an inch. He stood and watched the silver rain fall without blinking. The silver sword rain that came down was little more than an image. Han-sen had many talents, and before he became famous, he had already encountered this move. The audience watched the silver shadows pierce through Han-sen. Their hearts pounded, and many women held their mouths to prevent screaming. But despite what they saw, nothing happened. Han-sen still stood where he was, unmoved. He just peacefully watched the Silver Eye Prince prance about with his sword. Suddenly, Han-sen raised his hand and used 2 fingers to catch a single silver shadow. And then, all the rain disappeared. Han-sen was left where he was, holding one silver sword between his fingers, 3 inches away from his throat. But the 3 inches might as well have been 1,000 miles. Despite being held by 2 fingers, the Silver Eye Prince could not budge his sword. It was stuck. Han-sen's fingers moved, snapping the sword. Then, he followed up with a palm strike into the Silver Eye Prince's chest. All the audience heard was the sound of shattered glass. The Silver Eye Prince's silver armor was smashed into little more than glitter, as its pale colors surrendered to the wash of blood. The spirit's blood soaked the battleground, but he was dead before he hit the ground. Right before he crashed onto the floor, he disintegrated. He had returned to his spirit stone. Everyone who watched the fight had been petrified, as if they had been turned to stone. The supremely powerful Silver Eye Prince did not stand a chance against the might of Dollar. The spirit didn't even have the opportunity to fight back. Dollar, it really is Dollar. Dollar has returned. That is way too powerful. That's frightening. Cool. What nonsense were those professionals spewing? Didn't they say Dollar could not break Black Gold's hammer? They also said Dollar could not defeat the Silver Eye Prince. Well, take a look at that result. What are they to say now? Huh. Dollar, our Lord and Savior, is always with us. Kill, 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 keep going Dollar. Show them spirits what's up and become a son of God. Holy crap. Dollar really is still Dollar. Invincible as ever, even here in the second God's sanctuary. Allow me to kneel before you and kiss your hand. A lot of Dollar's fans were driven into a frenzy by the excitement of his most recent, sensational win. Han-sen exited the arena to wait for his next fight. Not long after, it was time for him to return. He didn't look at the list, assuming such a thing would be trivial and pointless. As such, he didn't know who he was to face off against next. The person who arrived on stage surprised Han-sen. He never expected his next opponent was to be a human, and more surprisingly, someone he personally knew. Queen is going up against Dollar. A lot of elite evolvers who saw the person standing in front of Han-sen were shocked. No one expected Dollar would be going up against Queen this day. Time was short, and they had only briefly been given the opportunity to analyze the list. And in regards to who his second opponent might be, there were far too many possible matches. And there was also the variable of not knowing whether Queen would win her previous match. The list Huaping had formulated only accounted for spirits, and he cared little for the analysis of which humans might face each other. No one knew Huan Fujing was Queen's real name. This is interesting. Queen is Dollar's opponent. I'm not quite sure who will be stronger. It's a shame Lin Feng is still on his mission and was unable to join Divinity's bout. His participation would make things even more interesting. Tang Zhenlu was shocked, seeing Queen square off against the enigmatic dollar, but he still felt as if it was a shame. Tang Zhenlu was hoping Lin Feng would be the one to go against Han Sen. Although he knew Queen was powerful, Tang Zhenlu had to admit he did not know much about her. Queen versus Dollar will be an interesting fight, that is for sure. The murder dollar legend is Dollar himself, and he knows Heavenly Go, too. I don't know if it's Heavenly Go or not. This is rather interesting. We'll have a metric to determine how powerful Dollar truly is. Who is Dollar, anyway? In the ice fields, in the royal class goddess shelter, the Beetle Knight continued to take on the shape of Han Sen like a doppelganger. It brought the little angel to observe the fight, and the people who had guessed Dollar was secretly Han Sen were quickly disappointed. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.